Okay, welcome to my YouTube channel. And today's video we're going to look at civic education, namely the parts of the Zambian constitution. So the first part is national sovereignty and state. So declaration of Zambia as a sovereignty state is the first part of the constitution. Then the second part is the Zambian citizenship. This mainly deals with how one can get and how one can lose his or our own citizenship. This is a topic on its own under civic education. We shall look at it later on in this video. So, okay, moving on, the third part we need to deal with is what? The protection of the fundamental of rights and freedoms of individuals. So, mainly civic education is about the constitution. The constitution is the basis for civic education, because all of this part we're going to look at them individually as a topic on their own. So continually, the third part deals with what? Deals with human rights and freedoms of individuals which are protected, stating and protection of rights and freedoms of individuals. That's what we're doing with. We're dealing with. The first part is the executives. So what are this executive? What does it have? Its content is what? Its content is to do with elections, tenure of office, and removal of the president from the office, and functions of the president. All that consists in what? Under the executives. Then the third part you need to know is what? Is the legislature. This part of the constitution contains the qualifications for elections, what you need to be qualified for elections, of National Assembly, and legislative powers, and the powers of the legislature. In short, it contains the function of the what? The legislature in that part of the constitution. The sixth one is what? The judiciary. The judiciary mainly deals with courts and appointments of judges, High Court and Supreme Court, and so on and so forth. So mainly we'll just look at 5, the rest again. Okay, so you have a notice here which you need to note that note that the 1996 Constitution begins with a preamble, introduction of what? To the documentary. You need to note that as well. Okay, so move on. Okay, as I was saying, you need to note that the 1969 Constitution begins with a preamble. So what is a preamble? A preamble is simply an introduction to the what? To the document. This kind of question can come under section B, and they can ask you how to define a preamble or what is a preamble. So moving on, let's describe the processes of constitution making and adoptions. What are the processes which needs to be taken in order for a constitution to be made in Zambia? So you need to note that Zambia inherited. Zambia inherited what? The Northern Rhodesia self-government constitution of 1964. Inherited it, meaning that Zambia was never the one who created or who made this constitution. Rather, it was the white settlers who made this constitution of 1964. But since that's when Zambia was getting this independence, it did what? It inherited it. It used it in another way. In simpler terms, it used it for the minimum up to 1996 until the new constitution came in. So after doing that, the reason why this is the very Rhodesia self-government constitution of 1964 was changed is because why? It favored the European settlers. For example, only white people are allowed to enter the shops to buy goods, while black people are allowed to buy from the shop on all the things. So that's why there's the 1964 Northern Rhodesia self-government constitution had to be removed because it favored the white or the European settlers. This important amendment to the constitution through appointment of a constitutional review commission. That's how it was changed, through the appointment of a constitutional review commission, CRC. So now let's look at what is a CRC. In other words, what is a CRC? So a constitutional review commission here is a group of people appointed by the president to go around the country to collect views from the public in relation with the constitution. Okay, so the constitution making process in Zambia is initiated by the executive organ. I'm going to note that it's initiated by the executive organ of the government. So the following are where the CRCs that made that 1996 constitution. So the first one you need to note is what? See, Ainza Chona, the 1972 CRC, Constitutional Review Committee of 1992. Its main purpose was to abolish multi-party, and it was chaired by who? Ainza Chona. It recommended abolishment of multi-party democracy and introduced one-party state. One-party state. One-party state. It outlawed the existence of opposition political parties. So these this is what I've underlined in a very important chart. That's the main thing the examiner will look for in the exam. So who was this Ainza Chona Commission Review Committee of 1992? It was chaired by who? Ainza Chona. What did it recommend? Abolishment of multi-parties, abolishment of multi-party democracy, and introduced one-party state. Its effect, it outlawed it removed the existence of opposition political parties. That's what I'm trying to say there. Then we move on to the next constitutional review committee. The next one is Mvunga CRC of 1991. It was chaired by who? Patrick, of course. It recommended what? The introduction of multi-party democracy. It included what? Children's right in the constitution. So these are many things you need to know under the Mvunga 1991. So after you know who chaired the same CRC, what it recommended, the effects, or what introduced something new, then you're done. So move on to the next one, which is Manakatwe of CRC of 1995. It was chaired by John Manakatwe. It recommended what? Amendments to the parentage clause, which stated that only a Zambian whose parents are Zambian by birth are qualified to contest for presidency. So this, just remove this. So this John Manakatwe of 1995, it simply said that anyone who wants to be president should be, first of all, should be a Zambian. Secondly, his or her parents needs to be both Zambians. This was done to remove Dr. Kenneth Kaunda from power. That's why that was the main intention of this constitutional review of John Manakatwe of 1995. So we move on to the next one of 0.05. Mvunga Woma CRC of 2005. So this one, it was chaired by William Muwonga. It was chaired by William Muwonga. It recommended the abortion of the constitution through a constituent Assembly CAC. What did it recommend? The adoption of what? Adoption constitution through what? The CAC, Constitution Assembly. So what is a Constitutional Assembly? A Constitutional Assembly is a group of representative of the society. This can be church leaders, group union teachers, other big institutions like that. This is what you call Constituent Assembly, and that's what it recommended in the CRC of 2005 of Muhonga area. So move on. It also recommended the expansion of the Bill of Rights to include the economic, social, and cultural rights. It's also recommended. Have you seen? It recommended a lot of things. So to help you remember this one easily, just know that it is the first one which recommended a lot of things, which is what? Muhonga CRC of 2005. It's the one which recommended a lot of things such as economical, social, and cultural rights, and also recommended the vice president to be the running mate. It recommended single-member majoritarian electoral system for the presidential elections. It also recommended the appointments of ministers from outside parliament, etc. The last one is what? The Luanga Technical Committee of 2012. It was tasked to prepare the Constitutional Amendment Bill Commission. It adopted most of the recommendations of Muhonga CRC rather to Muhonga CRC above. The technical committee prepared a draft constitution which was adopted by Parliament and signed by President Edgar C. Lungu on what? 6 January 2016. Okay, so those are the methods which were used to change the Northern Rhodesia Self-Government Constitution of 1964. Now let's look at the current methods which are used to change our constitution, which is the 1996 constitution. So constitution adoption means the processes of approving the copy of the draft constitution, meaning that before the constitution is agreed, first you need to have a draft. So after you have a draft of that constitution, what do you do next? You simply it needs to be approved. So how is that approved? Or the process of approving that draft constitution is called what? Constitution adoption. That's what you call that in the civic education. So one of the ways of approving a draft constitution is by number one, through what? Through parliament. So the draft constitution is taken to parliament, where the members of the parliament debate on the draft before adopting it. For example, Zambia used this same through parliament method of adoption of the constitution. How many times? 3 times in all the 3 constitution review commissions. So the next one is what? Constituent assembly. So what's the constituent assembly? Like I said earlier on in this video, this is just a body of representatives elected by their representative interest groups to formulate, amend, or adopt a constitution of the country. So just a group of representatives which are elected by a group of people. This could be church leaders, trade union leaders, trade unions, organization leaders, and so on. Those are elected to do that. So under this same constitution, representatives are drawn from churches, example the churches, learning institutions, trade unions, and student bodies, and so on and so on. This method is more democratic and more favorable to Zambian citizenry because it is free from government interference. So it's the best method. They can ask which one is the best method of amending or approving a draft constitution. Just simply say the constituent assembly, then you get your mark right there. So referendum, what is a referendum? So a referendum is whereby a draft constitution is given out to the members of what, to the general public, so that it can be voted upon. For example, you have the Bill 7 and the Bill 10, which were recently being subjected to the public to vote whether it's good or not. Like the Bill 7, Bill 10, which recently failed because a lot of people didn't agreed. That's what you call a referendum. A referendum, the draft constitution is subjected to. In other words, it's given to the general public to approve it through public voting. So in order for a draft constitution to be approved through referendum, what do you need? You need, if more than half, this is a condition, more than half votes cast are in favor of the amendment, 50 plus 1, the constitution would have been adopted and the Republican president will assent the draft copy. Assent simply means sign or to approve in civic education. So the final president, the Republican president, is the one who's going to finally approve the draft constitution. So move on to the National Constitutional Conference, NCC. The choosing of members of assembly of the NCC is similar to that of the CA, in that its members are drawn from various interest groups, but it's a conventional method. The only difference is that the final draft constitution of the NCC has to be adopted by by Parliament. So what's the difference between this one and the CA, which is the Constitutional Assembly? The National Constitutional Conference, this one, after a draft constitution has been made, before it is finalized, that it has to go through the Parliament before it comes a legitimate, or before it's approved. That's what it means there. So what? Move on to the next one. The next one we have to discuss the characteristics of a good constitution. Okay, so in order for you to identify which one is a good constitution, what do you need to do? Firstly, you need to have what? Number one, a good constitution should be clear language. Language should be clear, not a language whereby most of the people don't understand it, whereby if you read one rule, everyone is confused. So a good constitution needs to be clear and straightforward. It must not be too difficult for an ordinary citizens to understand. So that's the first thing. That's number one. Then the second thing is it's not supposed to be too rigid to prevent change or too flexible to encourage tempting with basic principles. So a good constitution should not be too rigid or too flexible. So if you don't understand what rigid or flexible means, you can look at the previous video on civic education. I talked about what the forms of the constitution. So a good constitution should not be too rigid or too flexible. It should be on both sides. It should not be too easy to change, also not easy to change. It should be balanced on the mid, whereby if there's an emergency, you can easily change it. Again, if there's someone who want to change it for their own self-interest, it should not be easy for them to change. So the third characteristic is what? Be stable and stand the test of time. Okay, so it needs to be stable and stand the test of time, meaning that you should, when you're making the laws or making the constitution should consist of the laws which are going to stand the test of time. It should favor all future cases and all past cases and all present cases. No new cases should disable the constitution, whereby someone has committed something which initially morally is wrong, then the constitution is not there, then that constitution is what? It's not stable. The constitution needs to be stable morally in order for it to become what? Stable. So we move on to the fourth one, which is cater for the interests of various groups in the society. So the constitution needs to save everyone in the society, be it poor, rich, disabled, ordinary citizens, government workers. The constitution needs to favor everyone equally. It shouldn't discriminate anyone or give powers to anyone. That's why the law. That's why that saying of saying that no one is above the law comes from. So now the last one is to protect the rights of citizens. Of course, every Zambian citizen needs to be protected by the constitution. So these are the characteristics of what a good constitution. So we move on to the next one, which is explain the importance of a constitution to a nation. Why should the nation have a constitution? Constitution. That's the number one thing you need to know. Why a nation should have a constitution. So the first thing you need to note is that in order for a nation, number one reason for a country to have a constitution is that it needs to protect and promote the law. So constitution is used to what? In other words, you can say what is the use of the what? A constitution. Number one is used to protect and promote the law. Number two, it states out the composition and function of the wings of government. Okay, it helps give function to the wings of the government so that each government organ should know its duty and its responsibilities. Then the third one is it safeguards the fundamental rights and freedoms of citizens. You need to protect the citizens, of course. Then the fourth one is owned and guarded by citizens. It needs to be guarded by citizens and owned by the citizens. That's where the term democracy comes from. Gives equal opportunity for individuals to develop. So these are the reason why a country should have the constitution. These normally come under section B, section C, essay questions type. So okay, we'll move on to the next topic, which is governance system in Zambia. So explain what governance is. So governance means the way people are ruled with or without consent. That's what we call it. So the main word you need to note is that ruled with without consent. That's what we call governance. How people are ruled with or without their consent. So we call governance. So what you need to know is that there are two types of governance. Governance. Namely, we have good governance and bad governance. So we need to differentiate, we need to define each. We need to explain each type of good governance. So what is good governance? Good governance means a government which is in authority is legitimate, competent, accountable, and respects human rights and the rule of law. That's how you define what a good governance. It needs to be legitimate, accountable, competent, and respects the rule of law. That's what can be qualified to be called what a good governance. Okay, so now what is bad governance? What is bad governance? So bad governance is just simply the opposite. This is a government which is not legitimate, non-accountable, non-incompetent, and does not respect rule of law. So now you have characteristics of good and bad governance. Citizens participate, separation of powers, respect for human rights, independence of judiciary, checks and balances, political tolerance, rule of law, fairness, accountability, and transparency, regular, free, and fair elections, existence of political parties, existence of civil society, and helpful and caring government. So when you say citizen participation, what you're trying to say is that citizens need to take part in the current affairs of the country. Examples of current affairs in the country, you can have voting. One of the examples, citizens need to vote in that country. That's the number one characteristic to show that this is a good governance government. The next thing you need to know is that Separation of powers. Each organ of the government needs to work in its what? In its own area, or it needs to have its own what? Functions and powers. Not the job of the executive is the job of the executive is also done by the the legislature. That's not right. That's not what good governance. So the organs of government need to work independently without interfering in one another's business. So the third one is respect for human rights. Human rights need to be respected in that country. That's number one sign to show that you see under good governance. And the fourth one, independence of the judiciary. The judiciary needs to make laws and judge fairly without being interfered by any other organ of the government. Checks and balances. The government needs to be accountable for what they have done, for any development and for any money released from the government. It needs to show where that money has went and how that money has worked in the country. Then the sixth one of political tolerance. Political tolerance, in a country which has good governance, we need to have multiple political parties to show that political tolerance is there. Then the next one is that the rule of law. No one, whether in power or in opposition, should break the laws in the constitution. Whether the president or not the president should not break the law or the law. Then fairness, of course, fair treatment. Everything needs to be done. No corruption, no any other unfair treatment in the country needs to occur. Then the next one, accountability and transparency. The current government needs to show what it's doing and what is achieved in the given period of time. Then the next one is regular, free and fair elections. Regular and free fair elections, existence of political parties and existence of civil societies, and help for caring. So simply the opposite of what I've explained is what we call bad governance. So the next thing you need to do analyze the different electoral systems practiced in the world. So what are electoral systems? So electoral systems, these are just systems which are used to choose a leader or representatives. So electoral systems, these are just methods which are used by citizens to choose their leaders or representatives, and there are about 4 of them which are used worldwide. So we shall look at one of them individually. So the first type of electoral system, we have single member plurality system, or first past the post. So this one, it features, or what it does, or what it means, that the candidate who scores the highest wins the simple majority winner takes all. So for example, if Zambia had an election, then if you are the president, then you contest in an election, then it turns out that the number of you yourself have the highest number of votes, then you have won the election. It falls like that. Winners takes all, and they call that first past the post. And secondly is we have single member majoritarian system. So this one works like this. Candidates who scores over 50, which is half of the votes cast, plus 1 wins the election. When you say plus, it means that you can get half of the votes. For example, you and I get 50% of the votes, and you also get 50% of the vote. But if I surpass you just by 1, I get 51%, you get 50%, which means I have won the election. In case there is no absolute winner, an election rerun, second ballot is conducted for the top 2 candidates. For example, you and I, an election occurs, then you end up getting 50, I also get 50. What will happen is that a second ballot or election rerun will occur just for the 2 of us. If we are the 5 of us, then only you and I got 50% of the votes, then those remaining 3 will be dropped, or we won't take part in the second ballot. The second ballot simply means election rerun. So only the 2 people of 50% votes will take part in the second ballot. Then the winner, who's going to have 50 plus 1, will be elected as the president. Hope there is clear. It's clear. We move on to the next one. The third one, we have a proportional representational system, PRC. So this is how it works. This one uses a party list system. Parliamentary seats are given according to what a party has obtained in an election. Okay, so the number of seats in the parliament are given according to what number of votes you have gotten during that election. So a leader of the party with highest votes forms the government. As simple as that. So the government is formed by the number of votes that person wins. For example, if my party gets the highest numbers of votes, be it on the parliamentary seats, the governor, the councillors, my party, all these positions were scoped by my party, which means the government will be formed by me. But if I only won the presidential elections, then there's other positions are won by other parties. Then we need to form a government, like in South Africa, we need to form a government of different parties, because the number of seats are given based on the votes that position gets. Hope is clear there. A leader of party with highest votes forms the government. MPs are not directly elected by the people, but are appointed by their representative political parties. Okay, so if my party wins, it's my party responsibility to pick MPs and not the public. That's what you call proportional representational system. Proportional representational system. So the last one, I've mixed member proportionality system. So combination of the first past the post and proportional representationality system. That's what it means. Simply means that